real conversation, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today, we are going to be talking about child exploitation, digital literacy, and internet safety. So we're going to have a bit of a warning here just about some of the sensitive content that we might be going through. For these topics, I have Kerry Shima here. Kerry is a 23-year member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He spent 10 years in K Division, or the province of Alberta, in the Serious Crimes Branch, investigating homicides and cold case murders. And he's now with the Alberta Internet Child Exploitation, or ICE, team for the past 4 years. Kerry is the current acting officer in charge for all ICE employees in Alberta. And since joining the ICE team in 2020, he's endeavored to increase awareness and community engagement in the province on these topics. So topics such as online child exploitation, sextortion, and digital literacy. Kerry is married and a father to 3 successful young ladies. So maybe a topic a little bit near and dear. But yeah, I'm glad to have you here. So welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Nathan. It's exciting to be on a show with you and an opportunity to spread some awareness and talk about our work.
Yeah, I guess I'll point out right off the bat, I do echo quite a few messages that Alert puts out in this realm. You guys do some amazing production on getting this stuff out there and just like, how do you convey these type of messages? So kind of kudos to you and the team over there. And we will get into more on that kind of toward the end of the show. But I want to start just by talking a bit about you and finding out about how you got into this work exactly, because it's definitely not an easy topic. So you tell us just a bit about your career and what led you into this realm.
So you're right. This is not the type of work that most police officers endeavor to get into at the beginning or even partway through their career. There's a stigma around this type of police work that it's difficult to manage, and people want to look at this type of material, and I think that's normal. And I was much like that from the very beginning of my career. I did postings in Hinton and Redwater and general duty, and then of course I spent time in homicide and cold case. And I thought that's where my career was going to play out, until I was convinced by a colleague of mine who used to work in the ICE unit to apply on a sergeant position in the ICE unit. And I took him up on it. I trusted him, and it is by far the best decision I've made in my career. This is the most rewarding work I've ever done, probably the most rewarding thing I've done in my life. I work with incredible people. Our teams in the north and in the south are just very passionate, very committed, dedicated people to this type of work very well together, and super successful, very good investigators, very good forensic technicians, very good support staff. The morale is great. Everybody, I think, finds the same type of reward in it. Everybody comes to it through a different channel, and comes to the ICE unit in a different channel, but we all wind up here because we have the same goals and objectives and the same passion for helping children. So it's turned out to be something really good. And I think that, I guess, the ICE unit gets a bit of a bad rep because of the content that we work with. And yeah, it's not nice. It's never something exciting for you to look at. But I think that the end result and the process of getting to putting bad people in jail and helping children is very rewarding. It's very enriching.
Yeah. Well, and maybe you can kind of describe a bit of the scope of your resources and the work you do, in the sense of, I had a prior guest on here, Stephen Ludlow, and he worked out of Ottawa, but he worked on the victim side of things. So ICE works on the offender side. So you get some evidence, you lead through an investigation, track down the offender. I want to give you the opportunity to explain kind of what side of it, the equation you're on. And Can you tell us a bit about the resourcing that you have and whether it's enough, or I guess everybody could always use more?
Steve Ludlow is a pal of mine, and he used to work in K Division up in Grand Prairie, and he's equally passionate about this type of work. And his work in the victim identification unit has helped Alberta police officers and our unit as well. And yes, he does work on a victim identification, or there's a victim identification unit in Ottawa where, as you probably heard, they help other ICE units and they help other international agencies identify children in the pictures. And as much as they do that, they still have to have some knowledge of the investigations and understand where that investigation is going. So they do work closely with us, and they're interested in the offenders as well,
Mhm.
because in a lot of these images and videos, the offenders appear, and that contributes to their investigation in identifying some of the children. So I have a lot of respect for Steve, and I know that he's done a lot of really good work over the years in the ICE unit for the whole country, not just our province or another province. As far as our resourcing goes, I currently oversee about 80 employees, or just under 80 employees, and we have not enough investigators. There's never enough, and I think that goes for any business line in policing. There's never enough people. Having said that, we're seeing exponential increases year over year in intakes and reports that come into us, and we're only actioning about 3% in our office, and we send another 7% out to divisions or detachments, depending where they come from. Now we have in the south, we have right now I think we're at 8 investigators, 7 or 8 investigators down south, and in the north we're working around 4 or 5 investigators. We're not nearly up to capacity. We're having trouble with resourcing, just like everybody else. The adage goes is that if you give me 10,000 people, I'm going to ask for 10,000 more,
Yeah.
and we're not going to ask for 10,000. But I can tell you that if we had 10,000 people, we still wouldn't get to all the work.
Mm.
And we're having there's a bit of a moral dilemma, and our employees suffer some moral injury because we can't get to all of the work. The internet um, is so broad and has no borders. It has the ability to develop, change, delete itself, reinvent itself hour by hour, and there's no possible way for us to keep up with that, or anybody to keep up with that. And when we talk a little later on about digital literacy, that's something we'll talk about. It's very difficult to keep up with what's happening in the internet, and that goes for police too. And some of our investigators and our technicians are highly trained, and they're still every day learning something new about the internet. And if you had more people, yeah, we could definitely get a better grip on what's going on. But right now, we're struggling to keep up, just like everybody else. And we're seeing. I think part of it is that we're seeing a lot more serious crimes. Like we're seeing what used to be maybe collectors or traders, so people who are just, well, appear to be, or were charging with possession and distribution of CSAM, or child sexual abuse material, which has been what we call recycled on the internet. So
Okay.
these victims are being re-victimized by their images being sent out and distributed. Although we have already, like Stephen Ludlow's unit has already identified a lot of them, those pictures resurface and we recycle them. So what we were seeing before was collectors and traders, and now what we're seeing is a lot of sextortion, luring, which turn into contact offenses. We're seeing offenders who are seeking to um, provide for a following, maybe, and making or generating child sexual abuse material by offending on children who they have access to. So those types of offenses take a lot of resources. As you know, they take a lot of resources, and with the internet, it makes it a lot more difficult. We're having to engage international partners. We're having to engage Ottawa. We're having to travel to find our victims, or to identify our offenders. So there's a lot of man hours go into one investigation now, whereas
Mhm.
before it was a little bit easier to get to a few more because it was pretty channeled into the possession and distribution line. So yeah, we have the same amount of people we did 5 years ago, and we're seeing much more serious offenses, which takes a lot more time.
Wow. Maybe on that, I'll stick a little bit on the investigation side. What would a typical investigation like? Is there any ballpark of how long an investigation might take? And for context, I kind of think of it like, if we have a drug unit, maybe they kind of shoot for like a 3 to 6 month investigation. They try to wrap certain things up, get steps done. If it's going to be longer, you're passing it off to a provincial unit or a bigger body or something. But within ICE, you're it. There's no passing it off necessarily. So, what's kind of a scope of an investigation? What does it look like?
It does depend on on a few things. For example, if we were working on one of those collector or trader investigations where we have perhaps somebody who's a repeat offender and they're collecting, and we know that they're collecting and trading, inherently re-victimizing all of the kids in those pictures, we want to arrest him and charge him and put them or take their devices, examine them. So the actual investigation for that can be fairly quick. We're dealing with typically one offender, typically one location, and a handful of devices. So that could occur in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how long it takes for judicial authorizations to come out,
Yeah.
and for us to get that information back. But typically, like I'd say about a month for that. Some of our bigger investigations, we've had some pretty complex ones in the last little while here, where we're dealing with some international partners, some national partners, and those ones are much more complex. And you'd understand that from the drug world, where you're dealing with different agencies and cross-border stuff. But those can take a couple months, 3 months. And of course, we have our emergencies where we get a phone call from the National Child Exploitation Crime Center in Ottawa, and they say, "Listen, we've got this image that came across from the FBI or from Homeland Security or from the UK, and we think that somebody is abusing this kid right now."
Hmm.
So what we'll do, we mount up and we attack it on an exigent basis. So it's an emergency. We're going to go get that kid, and we're going to go arrest somebody. So that happens in a matter of hours, and we go until we find the kid. That's all. That's how it works out. And usually, yeah, I mean, we've never been more than a few hours in doing that because we have access to some tools and things like that to find people. But yeah, it depends on what we're working on. We have emergencies and all the way to some longer term projects. But for the most part, we're looking about a month
Okay.
for an average file.
Just kind of on the how many offenders might be out there and the scope of these things, this issue. I remember long ago, it might have been a recruit class, but I remember detective showing us just kind of like I don't know where they got this or how they made this, but it was kind of just like a Google Maps, and it could show where your offenders are in the sense of like who's accessing, and it's just like they show the globe. And there's a pin. There's a pin drop in a country, and you click on the country, and it goes to the country, and then you have all your cities, and they all have pins in them, and you just go further and further down, right to like neighborhoods of like who's accessing what and doing stuff. And it was everywhere, like literally everywhere. And this is one of the things I was trying to get across to people is like a lot of the issues we have in society run across, socioeconomic spectrum. It doesn't matter your job title, how much money you make, the neighborhood you live in. These issues here span everything. And like we see everything from judges. We've had police officers involved in this stuff. We have politicians, like right down to people living in tents. Like it's kind of everywhere. So what is like? How do you get a handle on that stuff? And is it? I guess the other thing on that is you kind of explained how people are now, I would say, almost exposing in themselves to being caught because people are trying to make a name for themselves. So is this just like an ever growing, unrelenting problem and everybody's involved in it? Like, is it that big?
You hit the nail on the head when you said that it's everywhere. And when we say everywhere, it doesn't mean everybody.
Yeah.
Most people are good. Most people aren't pedophiles, and most people aren't looking at child pornography. And when we talk about who our offenders are, yeah, you're right. We've arrested police officers, firefighters, politicians, pediatricians, pastors, teachers, um, all of these people who, by virtue of their position in society, or even in a family have inherent trust
Trust.
from the
Yeah.
public or from their kids or from their, from relatives. And what's changed over time and why we're seeing those types of offenders is because the internet has provided this opportunity for offenders to veil themselves and to secret away a life where they can fantasize and act and even actualize their pedophilic um, tendencies. So we're looking at a police officer or a firefighter or a teacher or a doctor managing their own normal life and going to work every day and working with the public and having this what amounts to a front of being a good person, but then they go home and they begin accessing
Mhm.
the the child sexual abuse material or offending on kids or sextorting kids, and the internet has afforded them that veil. So where in the 80s and 90s when we didn't have the internet, we could always say, "Hey, look out for this guy in the white panel van that says free candy on the
Yeah.
side," or don't go to the park and pet the puppies in the truck. Don't go to the park and take candy from a stranger. It was pretty cut and dry who you don't talk to and how you manage strangers, the stranger danger. But now we're talking about the internet, which is boundless, and the accessibility to child pornography uh, is very high. You can access child pornography so easily. You can access the dark net so easily and learn how to get child pornography, learn how to groom people. And you can do it all in the privacy of your own home and behind that internet. So it's affording people who typically in the past wouldn't have had those opportunities to affect or actualize their fantasies. And I think that's why we're getting into that, where we're seeing people who, like I was saying, have inherent trust from the public or from their family because of who they are or what their job title is or what line of work they've decided to go
Yeah.
into. So yeah, it's everywhere. It's not everybody, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And when we say everywhere, we talk all kinds of work, all kinds of social circles, all kinds of families, and things like sextortion and child sexual abuse online does not prejudice. Like there's no prejudice to that. Especially sextortion, they don't care which kid, what that kid looks like, where they're from, how they talk or what language they talk. If they can access a kid online, it doesn't matter how wealthy their family is or how poor their family is or, what school they go to if they go to school. They're looking for vulnerable kids.
Mhm.
And as long as there's vulnerability in the world, there's going to be criminals waiting to take advantage of those people, regardless of what kind of crime it is. And the difference here is that there's no prejudice, which is scary because it could be any kid, anywhere.
It sounds like they almost use them just as a means to an end, right? So even if, matter if you don't have money, if you have money, maybe I can use your pictures to get money from you. If you don't, well, I can get you to do some other thing for me, right? So the kid is basically becomes a throwaway piece to the bad guy, right?
Yeah, and I think like sextortion right now is a worldwide epidemic. We're having incredible difficulty getting our a grip on this in the world. I think all ICE agencies, anyone I've talked to from other ICE agencies around the country or on other continents, we're all having the same problem with sextortion because of some of the laws that uh, don't protect children in certain countries where we don't have reach because the internet is uh, is so accessible to children and offenders. And like I was saying, like yeah, you're right. It's a by and large, sextortion is a financially motivated crime, and it's typically it's typically carried out by organized crime groups overseas and in countries like Africa, Asia, and
Okay.
Russia. But um, and you're right, it doesn't matter because it's financially motivated. It's much like a drug like it's much like drugs. Like they don't care who they sell it to.
Yeah.
If you're buying, I'm selling.
Yeah.
And same thing with sextortion, where they throw a million hooks into the water all around the world, and not every kid's going to grab onto it. Some kids are educated on it, some kids are hip to it, some kids are confident and have good digital literacy and are good digital citizens. But they're looking for that vulnerable kid, and that vulnerable kid might be vulnerable for an hour or two because their boyfriend or girlfriend dumped them. That kid might be vulnerable for a week because they're not getting along with their parents. Or that kid might be vulnerable their entire lives because of certain socioeconomic situation that they're in or the family's in, or something that maybe they went through in their lives or going through in their lives. And looking, and all these kids are, what the commonality between all of these child victims is that they're looking for validation.
Yeah.
They're looking for, they're looking to be appreciated and acknowledged. So if we don't have confident, intelligent kids who are making healthy decisions, and there's so many different factors that can play into that. But if we don't have those characteristics in our children, it's going to make them vulnerable. And it might just be for that hour that that one kid is vulnerable. And these criminals and these pedophiles have so many hooks in the water that it could be
Yeah.
any second, and it might be that just that window where that one child who's typically confident and has a good life, um, quote unquote good life, and typically confident, just has one moment of weakness and they're in and they're hooked on this person because they've validated them. They're giving them that attention at that
Yeah.
moment. So if we're not, as grown-ups, if we're not validating them on a day-to-day basis or a normal basis, or actually educating them on this, they're going to fall victim to that.
So that's one question I'm going to come to a little bit later about the responsibilities. Who's responsible for protections and certain things? Just before we get there, though, you mentioned organized crime. So this is one of the things I wonder if you could explain. Who is the main driver behind a lot of the material that is online? So if we're talking about the abuse material, because sextortion is one thing, abuse material is another. On the abuse material, is that more, are we looking at organized crime putting that out there? Or is it I think the stereotypical thing is people think it's just a bunch of people who have too much time and sit in mom's basement and are good with their computers that are putting this stuff out? Or is it just, it's kind of everything? It's all that and in between.
So a little bit like, so with the history of child sexual abuse material, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the only way to access or to possess it was to have an actual hard copy of the images or the video. And that required a lot of effort. You had to have a camera, load your film, and somehow take photographs of a child, whether being sexually abused or for a sexual purpose. And that would be difficult to do. So um, we had a lot of low quality. We had a lot of low quality images, and images that were still sexual abuse material by virtue of the sexual purpose of the picture. But we were seeing naked kids posing, or kids in bathtubs, or kids in underwear and things like that. Of course, there was sexual assaults that were recorded and captured as well. But the distribution of that was really throttled because it's very difficult to distribute. You had to mail it,
Yeah.
you had to hand deliver it. You couldn't scan it and email it, right? You couldn't fax it because the fax machines printed out nothing. You couldn't get a picture on a fax machine, and it was difficult to distribute it. So now what we're dealing with is uh, the internet, obviously, and it's no different than pornography sites where it's free. Anyone can download pornography. Anybody can look at pornography. It's the same with child sexual abuse material. You just need to go where to find it. You just need to know where to find it. And most of most of the, I guess, the trade secrets, or the way that you learn how to get into child sexual abuse material and the trading of it or the access of it is on the dark net. And the dark net is as easy to access as downloading an app and clicking on it, and it enters you into the dark net. And you can get onto forums. It's easy to find forums. You can find child sexual abuse material for sale. You can find live child sex shows. And in those forums, people talk about certain things like how to avoid detection, how to groom kids, how to get away with it, where to find the best material,
Mm.
where to trade material. How do I trade material with other pedophiles? And once they get into that, so there's other apps. There's normal apps in the deep web, like whatever, Snapchat, Instagram, Kick, all these other apps that these pedophiles will use, and they'll decide on, or Telegram, for example, or Signal, these encrypted apps too. So if A pedophile wants to trade pornography or wants to access some more, wants to connect with a group online. They'll go onto an application like Kik or Telegram and join this group. And that you access it, you learn about it on the darknet. Once they get into that group, a lot of them have initiation requests. So you have to be able to upload images of CSAM in order to get in, to prove you're not the cops, right?
Wow.
So they want you to buy in. So you have to buy in by sending the administrator images or a video of some sort of CP along with a photo of yourself. You're incriminating yourself.
Yeah, so it's kind of like they have some dirt on you, right, in case they need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once you're in these groups, there's obviously people who run the groups, and there's status there too. In order to stay in the group, a lot of the rules are you have to upload CSAM once a day or twice a week or whatever it might. There's rules like that to keep you. And if you fall off, because they know that it's sometimes difficult for police to upload stuff like that. Impossible? No.
Hmm.
But that's how they're trying to secure their group. And within that group, you have all of these traders, all of these sellers, and there's little offshoots. So, for example, if you and I were in the group and we wanted to trade just between us, we could go off and have our own DM. So I can say, "Hey, I want to chat with you," and in our conversation, what it looks like, and this is how it starts getting traded. What it looks like is, "What do you got?" And these guys are so much of the text is like, "Oh yeah, I've got my niece and this, or my daughter. I'm a teacher and I've got some students. I've got hidden cameras." But I'm looking for from you as a pedophile, I'm looking for first generation imagery. So I want you to give me something of value. So I give you something of value back. I don't want recycled stuff. And that's why we're seeing
Okay.
this proliferation of images and more victims, because I think it's the sexual drive of these pedophiles that makes them want more and more and more and more. So if I'm a pedophile and I'm looking to get something from you and you're like, "Yeah, I've seen all of that stuff before. I want something fresh." As a pedophile, you're going to have to go out and take photos of somebody, of a child, and you're going to have to show that, I've got this. It's never been seen on the internet before. That excites, as a pedophile, the person they're interacting with, and the value of it's high. People will pay for that.
Okay.
They'll pay in cryptocurrency. They'll if I'm interested in a certain genre of child pornography, maybe you have what I need. Maybe you have a collection of boys and you're like, I don't give this collection out for nothing. And so I've got to go and take some photos or take a video. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so until we get to the point where people are actually offending on kids. And that's where we become involved. And a lot of these platforms have mechanisms to report to police and stuff like that. So um, it's not, like, I imagine there's some organized crime in North America that are uh, are uploading or obviously trafficking in children and stuff like that. But for the most part, what we see are the same people you would cross paths with in the grocery store.
Yeah.
The same person you would cross paths, um, you know, at a hockey or a football game. These are normal people who we don't know have this secret life. So that's how we're seeing so much new material, is because of these forums and these groups. They're getting together and they are making new material, or they're altering material and talking about how to get more material and how to offend on kids and how to avoid detection and things like that. So there's a very big underground pedophilia community.
Yeah. Well, and once a picture's out there, it's out there, right? Like there's no 100% guaranteed way to remove it from the internet.
Yeah, and it's no different when I do my presentations. I talk about teenagers sending nudes out too.
Yeah.
And we see some of this too, where the nudes get kicked out of the consenting people who are supposed to have them in the first place. So for whatever reason, the nude gets disseminated outside of that consensual circle, and some of those wind up on our desks because it's circulated through the pedophile communities. But what we tell these kids is that you can consent to sending a nude to somebody. It's legal. There's certain parameters for youth, but um, the what we're talking about here is what happens to it. So when it gets sent out, you lose entire control of that.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter that you and I are best friends and I'm okay sending you a nude because I trust you. One day, maybe I do something to you and you get pissed off and you send it out. I can't ask for that back. There's nothing saying you have to send it back to me. And even if you do send it back to me, you still have a copy on your phone. And I can't control what you're going to do with that. So you're right. There's no 100% way, but there are mechanisms in place on the internet and that we use as law enforcement too to help victims through that and try and mitigate some of the trauma. So there's things like Take It Down from the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. If people aren't ready to report to police, if they've been extorted or they've sent a nude that they believe is leaked, or if they just sent a nude that they regret sending, they can on their own go up and upload it, and that program will take the hash value or for all intents and purposes, the fingerprint on the photo.
Okay.
They'll take that information and run it through certain platforms that have subscribed to that program, and that platform will continuously run that hash value through and remove the photo if it ever pops
Oh,
up.
really?
So,
Okay.
and it's got a pretty good, yeah, there's a pretty good subscription to that. So they've got like Meta, so all of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp threads is all on there. TikTok, Pornhub, a couple other adult pornography sites. Snapchat's on there too. So it's something for kids who may not be ready to report to police or don't know what to do. Or families. Some families just are like, we're not ready to go to the police yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then what we use is Project Arachnid. And it's developed through the Canadian Center for Child Protection in Winnipeg. And in addition to sending our images or whatever new images we have to Project Vic or to enter our victim ID, where Stephen Ludlow works, it gets sent to Project Arachnid. So the information about the pictures, so the hash value gets sent to Project Arachnid, and they plunk it into their program, which was cutting edge when it first came out. It was the only one, and still is the only one that does this. But it crawls the entire internet and sends takedown notices to websites that are hosting that image to say, you have CSAM on your website, take this down. And it's led to millions upon millions of images being taken down on thousands of websites in over 100 countries. So it's super effective. But like you said, there's no 100% way to stop it. When somebody has it, you can't take it off people's computers,
Yeah.
right? So it's out. But those are a couple ways that we try and assist victims in recovery and let them know that we want to help and we can help, regardless of how helpless they might think the situation is. So we don't want people thinking there's absolutely nothing we can do, because that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, I guess is for all kinds of crime types, but especially on this, a lot of people think if I report it to the police, it's already done. Things are out there. So what good is it going to do me to tell the police? On the investigations, do the detectives or constables or whoever's in there, did they themselves have to watch all the videos and look at all the pictures? Or is there a percentage where you can say, okay, I have 100 videos, I've watched 2, I've documented what's going on in it, that's good enough? But then also, I think it was Steven who was actually mentioning to me, it's actually not a lot of the detectives, but like a lot of the analysts who have to watch a lot of things, or there's other people behind the scenes who have to actually catalog things. And I don't want them to kind of get lost in the shuffle of, there's a lot of mental health stuff to be taken care of here, but there are a lot of people involved in these investigations that do have to kind of review the material. So what does that look like on your side of things? Who has to document it? How do they document it for evidence purposes? And then if you want to kind of end on maybe the mental health side of things, is there a certain, every year you have to go and talk to a doctor or anybody? Is there kind of protections for the members?
So I'll start with viewing the material. And there's a lot of research behind, I guess, how law enforcement or how people involved in child sexual abuse investigations should be looking at this material. and there's mitigation techniques in how we view it. So
Mm.
we have those implemented. We have certain mechanisms in our programs to filter images and help, you know, help, I guess, take the edge off at times. And a lot of these collector ones, and we're seeing I wouldn't say less of them, but we're seeing more serious ones. So we're not dealing as much as we can with the collectors ones. But if we use a collector one or somebody who's just been collecting them and uploading, there could be terabytes and terabytes, which means millions upon millions of images. And we're never going to look at all of those images. We have some tools that will help them through, but obviously, uh, you know, AI or whatever you know, automation we have is not reliable enough for us to simply use that. So there's going to have to be a human element to it, and that typically falls to our forensic technicians
Okay.
to review what our tools have identified. So we have to say, yeah, that's like the tool identified a couple of these things, and they have to go through, and those tools are pretty good. Like they have a very, very high success rate, but we can't solely rely on them yet. The technology isn't good enough. So the examiners are always going through and verifying that, yes, that is a baby, that is a teenager. You know, they're going through and having to
Mhm.
look at that and we call it categorization. So they do the heavy lifting in our office, and we have I believe 28 forensic techs between Alberta and or Edmonton and Calgary, and they do all the heavy lifting. They're the ones. I call them the propeller heads. They're the smart ones. They take apart the computers, bring in the phones, tear those things apart. Most of them are qualified as experts in court. Super, super smart and highly trained. But yeah, you're right. It's heavy lifting and it weighs on them. But yeah, the investigators as well. I mean, you're running an investigation and your forensic tech comes to you and says, "Hey, I think you need to take a look at this." So then they'll work together and go through whatever the material is. And obviously, you know, in order for us to form grounds to arrest or form grounds to charge or for an affidavit, we're still going to have to look at, as investigators, we're still going to have to look at the material because otherwise you don't know what, you know, you have to prove the offense still.
Yeah.
And moving to a sextortion file, for example, that's a little bit different. That's something where we can use certain tools to help the forensic examiners identify certain areas to look. But with sextortion, which I believe is the most underreported crime in the country, we're finding that we might have a victim of sextortion. One victim comes into, say, I don't know, Northwest Division and says, "I've been sextorted," or "My daughter's been sextorted. Here's her phone. What do we do?" So that phone comes to us. We find the pictures that she sent out, the child sent out, but we'll also look at the username and try and figure out who the offender is.
Okay.
When we find the offender, we go out, we'll arrest him, get his devices. And once we get his devices, and once we get into those devices, without fail, there are dozens, if not hundreds of other victims
Yeah.
who haven't reported. Those images have never been seen before. And we know that these kids are being abused. So we have to look through every one of those. We have no choice. And a lot of them, you know, some of these sextortionists do some pretty horrendous things to these kids. And they have that control because kids are so scared that those images are going to be sent out. Or they've been asked for so much money that they can't afford it. So the sextortionist says, "I'm going to send this out if you don't pay me the money." "Oh, you don't have $10,000, like 13-year-old? Well, that's too bad. You're going to have to continue sending me pictures in order to make up for it, or I'm sending these out." So a lot of these, offenders are are control freaks, and they want that control and dominance over their victims. So they're having them send pictures every hour. They're having them send pictures every week or whatever it might be. They're sending them things in the mail by courier, sex toys or devices to use in the videos. And um, have some really young kids terribly traumatized. And it's happening in the Edmonton, Calgary area, all over Alberta. It's happening. And so, yeah, so those images, we have to look at every one of those. We can't we can't afford not to try and identify these victims.
Yeah.
It's not fair to them. Like that's why we all do the job. We're all, like I was saying, we're all passionate about it, and our our brains and our hearts won't let us cut that off. So we're going to look. and we have to find these victims, and it's only fair to the victims that we try and help them. But a lot of them go unidentified. You can't exactly put an 11-year-old's picture out in the news and saying, "Who's this kid?"
Okay.
So yeah, so everybody looks at it, looks at everything, and our analysts, our criminal analysts, our intelligence analysts, all do some really hard work too, and dig through these pictures to try and identify locations, try and identify people or dates and times and things like that. So they're also looking at it. From a wellness perspective, we have built here in Alberta a wellness program specific to ICE. And what we've learned is that it's probably the first one of its kind in Canada. It's we've built it into policy and alert, and it includes visits from psychologists to the office. It includes group sessions for the employees and for the investigation techs with psychologists. And that might be, depending on what we need, it might be a debriefing. It might be a lesson that they're going to teach us on something. It might be vicarious trauma. It might be sleep. It might be how
Okay.
to, family life, work, family balance, work life balance. It might be anything like that. And we send out surveys to the team saying, "What do you want to hear about the next time we have group sessions?" And so they come in and they'll run these group sessions for a week with smaller groups. And we have a whole bunch of different things. We've for for whoever wants to use it, we bought a subscription to the Com app to to help. Some people use it, some people don't.
Yeah.
And but it's worth it if some people are using it and they're finding it beneficial. It's one less thing that they have to worry about. We encourage workouts on duty, frequent breaks. I mean, that's all in the research and having to view this material anyway. But frequent breaks. We encourage the use of holidays, and it's not a unit or it's not a place where we have employees who would ever take advantage of that. In fact, we have to force people to take
Yeah.
holidays because
Yeah.
they don't want to leave work. And I mean, you've probably seen that in policing as it is, right? Like there's a lot of cops who just live and breathe work. But here in this unit, it's different than anything I've ever seen, where it affects you from hour to hour, day to day.
I guess you're thinking too, when you take a break, right? There's no break for that kid or whoever's getting abused or whatever might be going on. So all the time you take off, yeah, you're thinking about those things. One of the questions I had too for you was with the recent legislation changes and just the difficulty of your job on the the other side of things with legislation and policy and whatever. There was a recent case, I think it was R versus Bykovets. I think I'm saying it right, to do with the IP address protections. Is this thing going to have a major impact on your files because now IP addresses are protected and you need to get just another layer of either production order or whatever it might be? It's just more time spent on writing another judicial authorization. Well, how has this impacted you? And do you find in general is a legislation pretty good for these type of investigations? Pretty open to like, hey, once you get going, like we're not kind of impeding you, or is there still lots of issues when it comes to this side of things?
Bykovets was a liquor store fraud case that went to the Supreme Court of Canada, where the police asked Moneris for an IP address. Now, in order to understand the gravity of this, we need to understand what an internet protocol address is. It is a sequence of numbers that is assigned to a device or a location in order for them to access a telecommunications service for the purpose of using the internet. Now, that number in itself is random. It doesn't have, those numbers don't mean anything. It's much like a license plate, notwithstanding vanity plates. It's much like a license plate where you have 7 digits. It's driving down the highway. No one knows who owns that car.
Yeah.
No one knows who's driving the car. And maybe most people maybe don't even know what kind of car it is or what year it is. That license plate is simply for the purpose of registration and for identification when necessary, whether it might be through law enforcement or Alberta registries, whatever identification it's for. And there's a database for that information. When you and I drive down the street in our police cars and we see a license plate on a car and that car is driving by the speed limit, there's nothing wrong with the car. They're not doing anything wrong. We're not concerned about it. We have no reason to believe they're committing an offense. We can't run that plate. There's no reason for us to run the plate. And you have to have grounds to run the plate. So it might be that this car's weaving in and out, and I want to know, hey, what am I dealing with when I'm going to stop this car? I want to know what I'm dealing with. Then we can run the plate. We have grounds. We can articulate that. And so then we get the information. But just staring at the license plate, even as a police officer, you're not going to know what that car is about.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing for an internet protocol address. So prior to Bikevitz, we could use internet protocol addresses for our investigation. We could start our investigations like that. So typically a report would come into us and it would say, hey, this application is reporting that there is child sexual abuse material uploaded through its platform. The IP address associated with that upload, as provided by Snapchat, is 12345678910. That's all you get.
Okay.
You don't get the subscriber, you don't get the house number, you don't get a phone number. But online, anyone in the world can go online, take that internet protocol address, and find out where its location is. You plunk it into, there's a million websites that will do that for you, all free. And you can plunk it in there and it say Edmonton, Alberta. It'll say TELUS. It's assigned to TELUS. That's all you know. But as you know, that's enough for us to get a production order.
Yeah.
So we can call TELUS, we send TELUS the message saying, hey, do you have this? Is this internet protocol address yours? Is this IP address yours? Yeah, it's ours. And we'll retain the information for up to 60 days. And then we have to get judicial authorization to access that information. So we still don't know. They give us the IP address. We still don't know what's behind it. We have to write a warrant anyway. So that's where we were pre-Bikevitz. The IP addresses are called public IP addresses. Like they're public for a reason. There's no secret to those numbers. So now, what Bikevitz has happened here is that fraud investigation. The police had gone to Monaris and asked for the IP address, and Monaris gave them the IP address. And subsequently, they went and got a production order for the subscriber information, which is our standard practice here as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that in a 5-4 decision that the IP address is not just a random sequence of numbers, and that there is an expectation of privacy to that by whoever has it. And as a result, as you could imagine, the reports that we get now have these IP addresses associated to them, but we weren't allowed to look at them.
Okay.
So what do you do with that? You can't do anything. We have nothing. If you don't have the IP address, you can't even start the investigation. All you have is a report of child sexual abuse material uploaded through this platform.
Yeah, because you don't know who to serve anything on. You don't
That's
know
right.
if it's TELUS.
You wouldn't know who to
what
serve.
company. Yeah.
Exactly. You wouldn't even know who to ask if they have the records, right? And so those investigations were all dead in the water. We literally cannot do anything with them. And that's 85 to 90% of all of our cases.
Jeez.
So what happened in Alberta over the last month or 5 weeks or so is the Specialized Prosecutions Branch and staff sergeant in charge of the Northern Alberta ICE unit got together, worked tirelessly over weekends and evenings at a solution. In the meantime, we had a few production orders denied on the grounds that it was in violation of the Bikevitz ruling. So what has happened is the Crown prepared a response to renew these production orders. She wanted the team lead in the North wanted to respond to this and try and see if we could articulate why Bikevitz doesn't apply to this type of access. We were volunteered those IP addresses from the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't ask for them. They show up on our desk. We're getting passive information or passive reporting from a third party. We didn't go to them and ask for it. There's no law here saying they have to give it to us.
Yeah.
So it's different than what happened in Bikevitz, where the police purposely asked for it, and that was notwithstanding the fact that the IP address isn't I don't think it should be private, but anyway, um, they argued successfully in these cases to the point where one justice said, "I agree, there is no violation of Bykevitz in the manner that you've used this IP address." So in Alberta, we've been successful in challenging these, and we're continuing to do it on a case by case basis. It's a matter of trying, I think, helping the judiciary understand how we come about our information.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
I think one of the issues that I always see with a lot of the decisions that come out is they never understand those second and third order consequences. Like, okay, I'm talking about this little fraud at this store. But when you make that decision, you impact all these other crime types, right? And you're like, they just don't grasp that concept. So now either investigations are just completely killed outright, or whatever you have done, or if you're in the middle of something, all of a sudden now you can't continue with it. And then going forward, it just makes your job even harder. So yeah, that's pretty sad.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the issue with cases like this, or any case that gets escalated to the Supreme Court of Canada, is in defense of the judges who are sitting on that, or who are in the Supreme Court. They can only consider what is in the four corners of that case.
Hmm.
They can't, they're not going to consider the ripple effect. So it's something that we have to be. And I mean, I don't know, was it the right thing or the wrong thing to take that to the Supreme Court? Maybe, maybe not. Uh, anyway, the rulings there, it's having a severe impact on us. We were shut down for almost 4 weeks where we weren't receiving reports, and our specialized prosecutions collaborated with RCMP Legal Services in Ottawa, and we are now getting those reports again.
Okay.
So uh, our our approach in Alberta is, as far as I know, it's the first time in Canada that we've that's been Bykevitz has been successfully challenged, at least at the authorization stage for production orders. And we'll like I mean, we'll see how it plays out in a trial for some of these cases too, right? It's going to be a challenge, just like any other precedent-setting case. I mean, Spencer back in the day was really difficult when when you started getting production orders for basic subscriber information for phones.
Yeah.
Um, and there's all kinds of case law that comes about, and what we have to remember is, yeah, it's challenging, but that's not just policing. That's life, and we have
Yeah.
victims that we need to take care of. There's no time to sit here and complain and um, whine about somebody making a decision that you didn't like. The inevitability of policing and of life is that we are going to have to adapt. We're going to have to change, and we need to make sure that we keep our eyes on the mission and worry about the medium second. How are we doing this? That comes second. Our mission is always has to be at the forefront. The mission can't be, well, the Supreme Court's, made a bad decision and it's going to ruin us. No, it's not.
Yeah.
We're still going to get there. We're going to get there. We have passionate people, dedicated people. Our specialized prosecutions branch is like unbelievable. It's just some of the greatest people I've ever met.
Well, and it has to be a can-do attitude, right?
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
You can't always, one of the worst things in policing is you'll find people, without a doubt, you'll always be able to find somebody who'll tell you, you can't do this. But they never tell you, well, okay, we all want to get to this goal. So let's figure out a way to get to that goal. We know all the things we can't do, and everyone will tell you that, all the risk effective stuff. But okay, well, let's get creative and let's think of some ways to get to whatever we need to. So, um, I'm going to, just for time's sake, I'm going to skip kind of the responsibilities. And there were some questions I wanted to ask on just some of the different websites out there and the what they do to kind of help out police, but also some of the things that maybe they don't report. So I want to get to the solutions though, because as I said at the beginning, Alert and your area is doing some really good stuff. The videos and the way you put the messages out, very cool. And I think the education piece is always important. So we've said digital literacy a bunch of times and talked about online safety. Can you explain what is digital literacy? And then what are you doing to educate parents, the public, businesses, whether it's, Meta or Google or whatever is out there? So how are you getting through to people?
So digital literacy is an understanding of what's happening online or electronically. Understanding your email, how that works, understanding fraud in email, understanding phishing, understanding uh, how to keep yourself safe and how to recognize threats online, understanding how certain websites work, certain platforms work. Now, it's much like anything else in the world. Like the internet is like a master's degree in university in order to understand, you know, the comings and goings of people. And then you'd have to take that master's degree every single week because it changes so much. There's no way that everybody is going to keep up with that. So what we're doing in Alert Ice is we've stood up a community engagement team that is going to deliver messages to not only parents and schools and kids, but they're going to deliver messages to police too and educate frontline investigators. We have a frontline investigators course that we're building right now that hopefully we'll have up and running by the end of the year for all police officers in Alberta, and we'll deliver that to try and help them better understand how to respond on the front line to these types of investigations and what resources are available to them. So I still go out do presentations probably weekly throughout the school year to parent councils, to businesses, to child and family services. We do presentations at professional development days for teachers. We have one coming up next week in St. Albert, I think.
Okay.
And the teachers have invited us, and hospitals have invited us to come and speak with their staff. And the overarching message of all of that is putting parents, educators, and caregivers in a better position to protect children. So we're helping them get a head start on their digital literacy. And I think in order for any adult like you and I both, we're never going to catch up to teenagers these days and what they're doing. So we need to build trust with children, and that's the message. We need to build trust with children, communicate with them. So in order for them to allow us to hitch ourselves to their wagon, they have to teach us. If they don't bring us along, we're left behind. They're
Yeah.
going to go ahead and do whatever they want because we don't understand. You don't understand anyway, Dad. You don't understand, Mom. You don't get it. But we shouldn't be in that position, right? We should be able to sit down with our kids and um, have the opportunity for them to teach us. But yeah, so we're doing a lot of community engagement. Our media and communications team is very supportive of what we're doing. They want we're always looking for new opportunities to get out into the public and generate awareness to help people to kickstart people's digital literacy journey. And it's never too late to begin learning. It's never too late to be taught by somebody in anything. But this is so important. It's so important for not just for kids, but I mean, you talk about seniors. My dad's old, and I can't tell you how many times he's called us and said, "I've clicked on something, and now my computer's flashing red." You know, that's digital literacy, and it's never too late to learn because it affects everybody. And when it comes to children and the victimization and the vulnerability of our kids, they don't have that wherewithal. They don't have the life experience to identify threats like we do. So, we need to team up with the kids and teach each other how to protect ourselves.
Yeah, well, and especially on this type of topic, how do you convey that, right? So, yeah, around police services, it's already pretty sensitive on the messages they put out. So, what is that going to look like? How do you contextualize things so that the public gets the seriousness of it? Because I'm a little bit of a critic of like we always just put out a picture of something. I'm like, well, that doesn't explain the context and the
Yes.
scariness of the situation, what the members went through. Like, we need to put things out. One of the videos though that you had there was kind of like the halftime in a drive-in movie theater. It was those like cartoons, and I just thought that was brilliant. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, this is what we this is the creativity that we need, and it'll get people's attention, but it also gets the message across. So Yeah, no, I thought you guys are doing some really cool stuff out there. Just as we're coming up to the end of our time, how can people follow you and alert the ICE team? Where's the best place to find you and any websites, platforms that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, you can find our internet child exploitation website at alert-ab.ca, and I'm on Twitter, and I frequently put out some information about awareness, prevention of online child exploitation. I can be reached on there, Kerry Shima underscore RCMP, and there's so many resources online. We just need to, we do need to take control of this on our own. And if if people are waiting for somebody to come to them and help them, that's probably not going to happen. People have very busy lives, so you're going to have to go out and look for these. Whether it's coming to one of our presentations, whether it's going to our website and finding the resources on there, which there's a myriad of them, or talking to people who have been to a presentation or have some understanding of a better understanding of the internet. Just to have these conversations about how best to protect yourself and how best to protect your kids. Just kids are there's so many applications out there, so many games, so many places where
Yeah.
kids can find themselves in precarious situations. And I mean, the message too is like the kids are never to blame for any of this. It doesn't matter what has happened, sextortion or otherwise. They're never to blame. There's only one person to blame for this, and that's the offender. Those are the people who are to blame, and we just need to understand that as well.
Well, great. I think we got a good message out here. I'm going to remind people to like, share, comment, follow. I'll put all the links up. And I want to say thanks for coming on the show today. I'll have to get you back on. I got a million more questions about this stuff, and I don't think we could do enough education on these topics. So yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Nathan. It's been great. I love this.